The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast presented by the team here at Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we're discussing the latest news and info that feds need to know in 15 minutes or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or whether you're just starting out in your career, Fed15 has got you covered. So grab your coffee, kick back, and we'll tell you what you need to know but might have missed in the federal benefits space this. We are your hosts. I am Katelyn Murray, and I am joined by Mr. Dan Sipe himself. Dan the man, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Katelyn. A little bit soggy based on the way weather's been going and going and going. Folks, I know we're not supposed to break time and space, but we're here on the East Coast, and those of us on wells are not worrying so much about running short during the summer. At least that's my mindset, but little soggy.
I'm worrying a little bit about the pool membership that I paid for this year. It's been hit or miss there. So
yeah, and the rain makes those pool temperatures so comfortable.
Tell me about it. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
All of a sudden it's cryotherapy.
Yeah. Well, and it seems too that like more and more we're getting like rainier starts to summer or colder starts to summer. And then September is like blazing hot and there's nothing you can do about it because the pool's closed.
Sure.
So yeah, pretty soon we're going to have to lobby to push that Labor Day thing back.
Oh yeah. 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 I mean, there's you don't wear white after Labor Day, but we do have to keep the pools open. So
yeah. I've got a friend who lives in Austin and their pools are open like until December. I'm like, man, I'm so jealous. But anywho, we've got a jam-packed episode for you today. Today we're going to be focusing on kind of a current theme. I think the thread of the plot line of today's episode, if you will, is all about federal employee rights
absolutely
in the workplace and protections that are in place. So Dan's going to talk a bit about, how to address a hostile work environment. Some of our feds may be confronting that currently. Then a little bit later on, I'm going to talk specifically about employee rights as they pertain to current LGBTQ issues and things like that in the federal space. So just kind of shining a light on those items today. So Dan, talk to us a little bit about a hostile work environment. Now, I wouldn't know anything about that because I have the best work environment ever. But I've heard that these things called hostile work environments exist.
Yes, indeed they do. And, I don't want to say I had one early in my career, but I have 4 friends that I've maintained for over 40 years that all came out of the same office.
Wow.
But the one thing we do agree is that we were bonded by trauma.
Well,
we just had a Michael Scott level bad boss.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I want to be clear about that. That was not a hostile work environment, but just a situation where your boss was doing things where you're going, how'd you get this job? But, I don't want to make light because we, through our nearly 40 years of serving feds, we have encountered folks that have encountered these hostile work environment situations, and it runs the gamut. First off, what goes into it? It can include discrimination, harassment, or retaliation that can disrupt your job's performance. The examples can include, slurs, racial or otherwise, inappropriate comments, threats, bullying behavior, being sidelined or demoted after reporting misconduct. So you didn't do anything wrong and you report it, and then something happens to you. And it often involves repeated things, unwelcome things, based on projected traits, race, age, sex, religion, disability, and especially when that becomes severe or persistent enough to interfere with your work and your mental well-being. So what can you do? Because again, that's what we're all about. We want to make sure that we're putting things out that help our feds across the board. So steps to address that hostile work environment, and we hope you don't have one. But if you do, step number 1, document. Any and all incidents, date, time, location, people involved, what was said or done or witnessed. Okay. Then you can report it to the agency's equal employment opportunity counselors. Okay. That's why they're there. If it's not resolved informally, a formal complaint must be filed within 45 calendar days of the incident. So don't sleep on this. If you've got a problem, bring it up. And early action preserves more options. Now, here's an important thing to understand. Federal law prohibits retaliation against employees who report discrimination, harassment, or unethical behavior, or who participate in investigations, or refuse to comply with unlawful directives. And we hope none of these things happen in your workplace. Absolutely. Now, that retaliation can take the form of negative performance reviews with no prior basis. We've been running into that a lot. Not necessarily from this, but I think that goes into the hostile work environments that started popping up with some of the things that were taking place in government over the last 90 days. Can also take the form of loss of assignments or promotion, demotion, reassignment, termination under questionable conditions. Now, the relief might include back pay, reinstatement, and more. There is, this is important to know, there is an office called the Office of Special Counsel. And they exist, as does the Whistleblower Protection Act, to provide formal avenues for correction. Now, if you are concerned about your job security in an increasingly politicized environment, career civil servants still remain protected despite administrative changes. Civil service laws safeguard positions regardless of shifting leadership and agendas. Now, supports for affected employees include EAPs for mental health and stress, legal counsel from federal employment attorneys, sources and support systems. Confidential support and legal guidance are available from EAPs for emotional well-being, federal employment attorneys for legal protections, unions and advocacy groups for agency-specific support. These resources aim to reduce isolation and help employees regain control in difficult situations. So, as always, what should you do? Protect yourself and your career. Okay? Be proactive. If there are issues, document them, bring them to light. Legal protections exist to ensure no employee must sacrifice safety for job security. And support is available through a variety of trusted resources. While it is not our bailiwick, as you can see, we make sure we're writing about this. So we consider ourselves to be part of that group, but educate yourself, be aware of your options, and stay proactive. So, Katelyn, tell us what we've got on our next article, talking about our folks who are part of the LGBTQ plus communities and where their rights are concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. So as, hopefully if you listen to this podcast for any period of time, you know that Dan always says, right, we're not red or blue, we bleed Fed. And that's very true. And we are here for all Feds.
Absolutely.
The entire federal community. And that includes our friends in the alphabet mafia or the LGBTQ community.
You're going to get me killed.
Oh, yeah. So we want to kind of... What? It's a thing.
Okay,
alphabet mafia. We love our alphabet
mafia. I know that. I'm old.
Love it. So looking at kind of today's federal workplace, right? There are some significant challenges.
Absolutely.
We've got workforce cuts. We've got return to office mandates that are affecting folks who maybe live, pretty far from a physical office, whose office maybe doesn't have the capacity for all of the employees that are, part of that office, as they've leveraged remote options. Budget reductions, declines in DEI efforts. All of these are kind of some challenges that we've heard about. And there is also a lot of historical context with regard to LGBTQ employees in the federal government. So kind of diving into that so that we understand kind of the context around this, because context is important. In the late 1940s and 50s, we had something called the Lavender Scare, which was a period of time where homosexual federal employees were kind of targeted as security risks. And it was disproportionate, let's say. And that resulted in the passage of, or the signing of, Executive Order 10450. Now, Executive Order 10450 listed sexual, and I'm doing air quotes here for my folks on Spotify, perversion as grounds for dismissal. And this was defined as, homosexuality. This led to the termination of somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 LGBTQ plus federal workers. So in the 1970s, kind of following the through line here, the Supreme Court actually passed some rulings that prohibited firing federal employees solely based off of their sexual orientation, right? So that's, a step in the right direction there. And Executive Order 10450 was repealed by President Obama in 2017. Despite this progress, there obviously is still workplace discrimination against LGBTQ plus federal employees. And there is a study by the Williams Institute that is cited in this article. I encourage you, if you're interested, to go take a look at that. As recently as 2023, there's documented discrimination in the workplace against LGBTQ feds. So kind of some more recent updates here. On January 20th of this year, President Trump issued Executive Order 14151 and Executive Order 14169. These were focused on ending certain DEI programs and also on emphasizing biological sex in federal employment. Executive Order 14169 in particular restricts gender identity considerations, which affects access to single-sex spaces. And these executive orders have caused concern amongst the LGBTQ federal workplace community, worker community, about potential targeting or dismissal similar to what we saw under the Lavender Scare.
Sure.
However, I want to emphasize that there are legal protections available at this point in time that did not exist in that Lavender Scare environment. So, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, right? Passed in 1964. This is one of the strongest protections that's out there. It prohibits discrimination based on race, religion, color, national origin, or sex. There was a Supreme Court ruling that extended that protection to cover sexual orientation and gender identity. The Civil Reform Act of 1978 is also an important piece of legislation. This is meant to protect federal employees specifically, including LGBTQ individuals, from unfair and discriminatory practices. We also have some executive orders in there. Executive Order 13087, which was signed in 1998, prohibits sexual orientation discrimination in federal jobs. And Executive Order 13672, signed in 2014, prohibits discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation by federal contractors. So there are some legal protections, some legal frameworks that are out there as well. So how do we navigate the current legal environment, right? How do we stay prepared? STWS is all about planning. It's about staying ahead. It's about, knowing what rights and protections are available to you on the financial side, also on the workplace, hostility side. So stay informed through advocacy organizations. You can look at the Human Rights Campaign and Advocates for Trans Equality. Document kind of what Dan was talking about, right? Document the issues. Don't brush it off. Make sure that you are writing things down and that you're documenting things appropriately such that if issues do escalate or tensions do escalate, you have that context to fall back on. So document any suspected discrimination or harassment thoroughly. Report concerns that you have to Human Resources or file claims with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That can also be a great resource. And, if the situation calls for it, if it comes to this, which hopefully for most folks it won't, seek assistance from legal experts or advocacy groups. You can look at Lambda Legal. You can look at GLAD Law, GLAD Law. There is a course of action here and a legal precedent here to protect all feds. So you want to make sure that you stay vigilant and you stay aware of rights-threatening actions. And if you do suspect discrimination in the workplace, immediate action is advised, right? Kind of going back to what Dan was talking about as far as that time frame, right? 45 calendar days to file a formal complaint from an incident. These things have whether they should or whether they shouldn't, they have a time frame associated with them. So if something happens and you spend 6 months thinking about it and then you report it, the impact there is definitely affected. So it takes all of us to keep all of us safe.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Advocate for your other fellow Fed employees and look out for each other. Take care of each other.
And we live in a country of equal protection under the law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And those are important words, and we need to hold the country to them.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Well, folks, it flew by again. That's all the time we have for today, but you can't get rid of us. Okay. We will be back next week to bring you the latest updates you need to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
Absolutely. And until then, I'll be plotting about how to make Dan burst out into laughter again. Analytics, meantime, shows us that 78% of you folks, 3/4 of you folks who are listening to us every week aren't subscribed. So subscribe to this podcast, subscribe on our YouTube channel, subscribe on Spotify. If you're an audio only person, I totally feel you. That's where I listen to my podcasts. But make sure you are subscribed so that you never miss an episode. And please, please, please do share the podcast with your friends and your colleagues. It helps us shine the light even brighter for Feds so they know where to find us. In today's, environment, there's a lot of people targeting Feds right now.
Absolutely.
Not all of those people know what they ought to know about federal benefits. I'm just going to say.
It's very true. And, hey, do we have a financial planner group? Absolutely. But look at the stuff that we put out has nothing to do with that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because if it helps you, we want it out there. And that's every single Fed, everywhere, whomever you are. Okay. For more information on the topics we covered today and more, check out the blog at blog.stwserve.com and subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Serving. You can do that right on the website, and then you'll get the latest stuff delivered directly to your inbox every single week. You don't even have to go look.
And for those who want to dive even deeper into learning about your federal benefits and financial planning for Feds, we encourage you to join us for one of our complimentary webinars. We are still doing our very popular early retirement webinar focusing on VERA, VSIP, and discontinued service retirement options for Feds. Those are coming up. The next 2 dates we've got one on July 9th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. That's going to be hosted by the one and only Mr. Dan Sipe. We also have, if you're busy that day, we've got another one coming up on July 15th. That's from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and that's going to be hosted by yours truly. So please stop by one of those if you're somebody who, the early retirement, thing could be relevant for. We're going to be covering again VERA, VSIP, discontinued service retirement, and how all of that affects all of the different various parts of your benefits.
Katelyn, I'm going to go a step further. If you're a Fed,
all of it.
Okay, come to this because it hurts my heart. I'm meeting folks every single week that made a decision because they had 7 days to do it, and they didn't want to miss out on something, DRP or something like that. And they made a decision that wasn't in their best interest. So we're putting this out there into the universe to do good things. Everybody should attend and everybody should share this because it is vital information. If you are less than a year from those magic numbers where there would be a discontinued service retirement if you were RIFT, does it make sense to accept a DRP?
Yeah.
So those are the types of things we're trying to put out there. So I'll go a step further. If you're a Fed, watch this so you understand it. It's going to help you and it's going to bring you peace of mind.
Yeah. And best of all, it's free. So you don't have to pay for it. It's complimentary. So definitely stop by, join us. If you prefer a one-on-one approach and you want to kind of dig deeper into your benefits plan, of course, we can have a financial planning consultation. You can reach out to our team directly at meetings@stwserve.com to get that set up.
Absolutely. So folks, thank you once again for listening to the Fed15. I'm Dan Sipe.
And I'm Katelyn Murray.
And we will see you next week.
See you there.